One of the first misconceptions I have to deal with always is that science fiction is about the future. Well, if the story is set in the 24th century, if it's set in some described future, certainly it's going to qualify as science fiction. One of the first themes that we talked about, one of my favorite themes to watch and to analyze, is that of time travel. And if you travel into the future, yes, it will qualify as science fiction. But does that mean that science fiction is about the future? No. Most often, it's about the present. The future is just the background. It's just the canvas. The problem is actually in the present, or shown to be the consequences of decisions that we're making in our present. The next misconception that I have to deal with is that science fiction really is about science and technology. Well, here again, some very interesting connections were made. And with the growth of science and technology, we saw the growth of science fiction. Hey, it's even called science fiction, so it seems that that science component is totally inescapable. We also spent some time talking about one of the forefathers of science fiction, Jules Verne, who was totally preoccupied with technology, particularly transportation technology. And that is an integral part of any science fiction creator's portfolio. Another one of our forefathers was Hugo Gernsback, a great fan of Verne, also pushing this function of science fiction, literature of translation. Technology was certainly becoming more important to our society, to our economics, even to our warfare, and there were tons of story. But still can be fun, obviously, and we looked at that relationship from a humorous point of view and from a more serious point of view, more contemplative. As we started to realize the importance of technology in our lives and society in the 20th century, we started to speculate more and more on our relationship with technology. But we should also always remember that it's really about us. It can still be very current. It's not about the ongoing conflict between humanity and technology, but it's the ongoing relationship and merging, possibly, of humanity and technology. It might not be the traditional pulp fiction storyline of man versus machine. It might be that we totally voluntarily accept technology as our next stage in our evolution, man into machine. And when we start thinking about questions like this, we're starting to get a little bit more philosophical. Now we're looking at technology not only as a storyline, but a way to analyze the social impact of that technology on us. Yes, technology, science are considered, particularly when they're outside of their historical context, as in my definition, we find that it's certainly a very integral part of science fiction. But at the core, we find that it's still about people. Technology just sort of puts them where you want them. It may be the canvas that challenges them, but it's still about our reactions to our environment, our growth path that we're on, our evolution, what will change, what will not change. Another thought is that science fiction must be about aliens. The presence of extraterrestrials in the story certainly qualifies it as science fiction. Certainly, we have all kinds of variations. We got good guys, we got bad guys, scientists, we even have tourists. But no, it's really just a tool by which to better analyze people. Another way that we looked at science fiction is through a model of gadgetry, adventure, and social comment. When we look at the importance of gadgetry and high-tech toys, we know that science fiction, it's virtually inescapable from science fiction, particularly the boys who love their toys. And we are still in the entertainment business, so we instill a high dose of adventure alongside that high technology, and we provide the ultimate escape. Think of it as going to another place, another time, another reality, and all the toys you take with you and enable you to go from one adventure to the next. With regards to this combination of gadgetry and adventure that contributed so much to a sense of wonder that we required in these science fiction stories, we presented three Georges: George Méliès, George Pal, and George Lucas. And we thank them for making it so real and certainly so much fun. But interestingly enough, we also identified a social comment proportion, particularly in that enduring and endearing class of science fiction, what we call classic science fiction. We realized fairly early on that science fiction was escape into reality. It was escapism with a twist. Where else would you actually find that you would escape into a world where there was genetic engineering taking place, or climatic change, population explosions, nuclear holocausts and mutations, cyberspace robotics, and planet-sized disaster? But really what we end up seeing is that it's about questions about how strong we are, how resilient are we as people, as humanity, how have we survived, what has our evolutionary path been, and many questions about what is important to us. At the core, what does it mean to be human? Now, we explore these questions in all of our social sciences. We explore in psychology, on an individual level, what motivates us. In sociology, we talk about the importance of the groups that we join, that they're so important to us for humans. In philosophy, we actually look to understanding the universe around us, ourselves, and our role, if you wish, in this world, in this galaxy, in this cosmos. In a sense, we explore those same questions in our art, in our music, in our literature, and so also we explore it in social science fiction. Now, when we talk about social science fiction, we're to the tagline of the course. We're talking about social analysis and criticism, and we meet such individuals as H.G. Wells and Gene Roddenberry, who lead us to another conclusion. Science fiction may be social experimentation on paper. Now, this is not a role that all of science fiction will fulfill, but a high proportion of the science fiction that really counts, the science fiction that we're concentrating on, the classic science fiction, the enduring and endearing science fiction, seems to fulfill this role of social experimentation on paper. Social science fiction was a weird and wondrous literary laboratory for social experimentation. We now come to a definition of social science fiction where we find that we are moralizing about today by inspecting a futuristic society, moralizing about a current society through inspection of a believable, fictitious society, differing from our own chiefly in the nature of its science and technology. That was that technology taken out of its historical context from my definition. Now, before we start worrying about it being too philosophical, that sense of wonder that we cloak this in, including the gadgetry and the adventure, makes it all a lot of fun. But as we scratch away, we find more and more questions. Not always more answers, but always more questions about our own human condition. And these are the most basic questions we ask. Who am I? Where have I come from and where am I going? Ending at what may be the prime questions. The question that I guess we all face during puberty. How do I fit in? Will I be able to make a difference? What is really the meaning of life? And so I end up actually talking about philosophy and the most basic core questions of what is good, what is evil, what is faith, what is reason, what is truth, what is real, and if I could determine all of this, can I handle it? The earliest philosophers dedicated their lives to the pursuit of knowledge, and their love of wisdom, quote unquote, earned them the designation of philosopher. Later, philosophy was defined as an unusually stubborn attempt to think clearly. To do so, we have to start by asking the most basic questions. What's good? What's evil? What's the nature of man, of society, of God? Now, social science fiction, as we defined it a little earlier, moralizes about these same questions. Just like philosophy, it concerns itself almost exclusively with questions of the human condition. Are we free to make our own choices, or is there such a thing as unalterable destiny? How do we know what's real? What if we could no longer trust our senses or intuition to determine what's real? These are some of the most basic philosophical questions, and we saw these same metaphysics explored in science fiction. In Blade Runner, the replicants are looking for their own definition of self, in a world where one cannot tell the real thing from the replicated being. In The Matrix, we struggle to first free ourselves from a destiny dictated by technology, our own creation, and then we test to see if we can actually handle the truth we've just uncovered. 2,400 years ago, Socrates taught his student Plato and the world that goodness was based on wisdom, and evil had its roots in ignorance. Plato knew that everything in the realm of nature is subject to constant, unrelenting change. Flowers open and close daily, vegetation comes and goes seasonally. In addition to these observable changes in the short run, nature follows a less easily observed long-term evolutionary path of change. Now, as all of human experience exists within a very dynamic framework, Plato concluded that all human experience must be in a state of constant flux. Now, in this regard, I think Plato would have liked science fiction. It is the preeminent literature of change, which I talked about very early on in the course. In addition, social science fiction in particular comments on the human condition. It speculates about how humanity might be different, or the same for that matter, as we travel through time and everything else changes around us. Both social science fiction and philosophy speculate on the growth and decline of our societies, our civilizations, and ultimately our collective and our individual morality. This is where science fiction writer and philosopher come full circle with the questions: what's good? What is evil? Plato persevered with his quest for knowledge, even though he knew that answers are hard to find when the questions keep changing. And then his student, Aristotle, formulated out of all of this philosophical discussion 4 principles of inquiry that we used to analyze our creations of science fiction. The questions that we must ask in order to gather wisdom. And here we are, with the ultimate question: what is the definition of humanity? Our modern-day tools for finding out anything and for changing our environment are science and technology. Since the Industrial Revolution, we've become more and more confident and enamored with the idea that we are in control of our own destiny. Now, only recently, as our technologies have become so powerful, have we started to question if we're really the master or the slave to these tools, these technologies, to these systems. We now stand at the dawn of the age of genetic engineering, robotics, cybernetics, and artificial intelligence, and will soon be forced to redefine the essence of humanity itself. I wonder if philosophers actually look to science fiction as reference material in their ongoing contemplation of the human condition. Isaac Asimov mused that the most important role of social science fiction might be its social experimentation on paper. Technology has often been defined as the application of science. We say that technology is applied science. I wonder if we could apply that same idea to a definition of social science fiction and say that social science fiction is the application of philosophy. Yeah, I like that. Social science fiction is applied philosophy. Now, maybe I didn't start there when I designed this course back in 1996, but it sure seems like I've ended up there. Now, I don't really believe that I tricked you, but the better I get at peeling the onions, the more convinced I am that we did end up in a philosophy class, pumped up with some kind of sense of wonder. And I told him, no, I just work in outer space.